Trauma Center. It's the private
Okay.
practice. And then we
Okay.
also have Refill Life Incorporated, which is the nonprofit.
Okay, cool. All right, so we are officially live. Hey, everybody, thank you for tuning into the Conquer for Me podcast. I am super excited to introduce another founder and business owner, a mother, and someone who is really passionate about this mission purpose. And she is in Chesapeake, Virginia, Dr. Danny Murphy. And she's about to tell you a little bit about her business and nonprofit. And we'll get into the deets more as we go.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Lisa. I'm Dr. Danny Murphy. I am a trauma researcher, counselor, educator, professor. Also, I'm a licensed psychotherapist. I am the founder and clinical director of the Refill Life Trauma Center. We are headquartered in Virginia, where we treat complex trauma. It's kind of like those mother wounds, father wounds, abandonment, rejection, developmental trauma, attachment trauma, and also we specialize in ADHD and autism and how they marry together. So trauma and neurodiversity. Um, and we also have, I'm the founder and president of Refill Life Incorporated, which is a suicide awareness prevention nonprofit where we do a lot of outreach, workshops, training, education in the local community.
Oh my gosh, I love hearing all of that, and also because I am a neurodivergent.
Mm,
Um
me too. Me
I'm
too.
yeah, I'm a neurodivergent and I have two boys who also are one's autism level 2 and then the other one's AUDHD,
Mhm.
and I have also CPTSD, but it is very new to me but very huge that I understand more of like the clinical side to understanding, like, for instance, ACT, like that type of treatment versus DBT.
Mm.
So there's just like so much to it. I'm not like a therapist or anything, but I'm also a founder, so I'm very passionate about understanding trauma and understanding like the neurodivergent brain, because I've had to like learn how to high function or function in general, without like trying to label myself like I'm stupid or I'm dumb.
Mhm.
So I want to ask you, what was it that pursued you in this venture? Like, got what was first, the business or the nonprofit, or how did it work for you? Did you start as a psych? Did you start as a therapist? What was your first move into this field?
Yes. The first move was the nonprofit. I'm a suicide survivor. I also am a neurodivergent and trauma survivor. So upon my recovery, I started the nonprofit like I want to help others because not only is there this stigma, right, surrounding self-harm, depression, trauma, suicidality. At the time, I didn't even know I was neurodivergent, right? So I'm
Yeah.
recovering from suicidal attempts that I made on my own life. Um, and there was lifelong treatment didn't work, and the things that finally did, like, hey, I want to outreach to the community. So established a board, started off with one annual event, which led to the establishment of the nonprofit, and that was 7 years ago.
Oh
Um,
my gosh. 7 years ago.
actually,
Wow.
well, a bit longer than that when we talk about how long we've been doing the actual event. Because we could not turn it into a 501c3 until like years later.
Yeah.
Um, and that led to me establishing my private practice. I've always been studying psychology and been interested in it. I'm almost 50, so I graduated high school in the 90s, took some psych courses, majored, and got my bachelor's degree in psychology, journal psychology. Then
Wow.
I went on to do my master's in clinical mental health counseling, and then went to get my PhD in counselor education and supervision and development. So it's been a long journey.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Lady, that is a very long journey.
Mhm.
Huge inspiration to me because I am still in trying to finish my bachelor's. And when you just told me all of this that you have been able to accomplish, I'm just like, girl, and you do not even look over 30. Like,
Mm,
like you look
thank
really good. Like, I wouldn't even been able to, that's what I say, like, age is just a number. It's just a matter of like how you take care of yourself, what you know.
1,000%.
And when you said that, you're a suicide survivor, that's huge. You turned your pain into purpose.
I did.
And 7 years ago, wow, that's how does that feel? Like to say that, like to be like, wow, that was
It's amazing. Although I've been doing this work in different avenues for decades, just really turning the businesses, right,
yeah,
official. Um, it's amazing. Um, Absolutely amazing, and I think what connects me and bridges me to the work, bonds me to it, is the fact it is my personal journey and experience. And I'm
yeah,
very forthcoming with my clients, that I treat and practice as well, that I'm neurodivergent and a trauma survivor, and I can relate to what didn't work for me, which
yeah,
is like cognitive behavioral therapies, identifying the negative beliefs, challenging them, and reframing them, affirming them. And it's
mhm,
like, and then like, but trauma is housed in the body, right?
yeah,
So it's like those top down approaches, just had me in the cycle, of just
yeah,
not getting better. So I'm here. And that really helps, because they can feel that I'm talking to someone that is not only trained in it, right, but they
mhm.
can actually relate and see it from my, because if I don't understand your problem and your challenges and what you're going through, how am I going to help you?
Yeah. No, 100%. When you say that, it really hits home with me because as someone who's gone through multiple therapists and just, misdiagnoses from being called BPD, and then in reality I actually had CPTSD and ADHD,
Mhm.
and those symptoms really align, especially when you have trauma. And I really feel that, like, today personally, like, I can't have a therapist that does not understand the way the ADHD brain functions, cuz we don't, like sitting down and watching a movie, and like there we relax differently. Like, we have a different type of,
Mhm.
every neurodivergent does, but I'll never forget the one day that I had a therapist like telling me, like, what is it like to relax? And like, why don't you watch it, trying to, and I was like, that like causes more anxiety. Like, I need to be doing art. I need to be like reading a book or like trying to watch TV at the same time. And it's crazy to think like how you have been able to do all of this and also being a neurodivergent
Oh,
and
yeah.
you're a mother. So it's like we are super powerful as long as we know how to use those strengths in our mind
Mm.
instead of let them bring us down and like break the stigma.
Absolutely. I love that. One of the biggest questions that I get even in the online community is, if you have ADHD, how did you get a PhD? How did you?
I
And I'm like, to be honest, I struggled more before my diagnosis. I wasn't diagnosed in childhood, right? I was diagnosed
Mhm.
as an adult.
Same.
And then I'm like, oh, that makes sense. That lights up. That's like, okay, so now I can resource it. Um, and then I thrived better, right? In,
Yeah.
higher education and academia, knowing
Mhm.
what my struggles were, and like how
Yeah.
I need external resources to assist me instead of just trying to white knuckle it, right?
Yeah.
And not
Yeah.
see what's going on. I wanted to address you. You mentioned having CPTSD and ADHD, and a lot of people, they show up or emerge. Usually the ADHD is a neurodevelopmental condition. It shows up first, but that's so traumatic. I'm curious to know if you knew as a kid, because a lot of times people either don't know and you have
Mhm.
ADHD, and the long-term exposure of not understanding. yourself and
Yeah.
the challenges and being in a neurotypical environment is very traumatic, and it leads to the breaking down, right, of the
Mhm.
ego over time. Or if I do know, I'm still in a neurotypical environment that's not properly
Yeah.
releasing me, right? And so things feel traumatic, but they tend to co-occur. Like I have ADHD,
Mhm.
I have an 80% chance that I'm also gonna later develop complex
Mhm.
trauma down the road.
Yeah, so for me personally, so I'm in my mid 30s, and you know, back then in the 90s, there wasn't such thing as, well, for my type of childhood I grew up in.
Mhm.
Um,
Great.
I was a very self-sufficient, had to raise myself for the most part,
Oh,
like, um, very functional, high functional.
mhm,
But yes, the most recent therapist that I spoke with
mhm,
told me that it is very likely that I did have just, I was born with that neurodivergent brain. And
mm,
then with that childhood trauma that happened, because I had a lot of suicide ideations,
mm,
my parents, which this therapist still practices today. So I'm going to mention her name because she's absolutely amazing. I can't believe she's still in practice. Her name is Marjorie Laird. She's in Lakewood, Colorado. Well, my parents took me to her because I had a lot of suicide attempts. I was cutting, doing all this stuff, and the therapist tried to sit my parents down and was like, "She has PTSD. Like, she has suicide ideation and depression. We'll give her some Prozac. We're gonna do the therapy. We're gonna do the work." I was only like fourth grade, and my parents just, they couldn't do it. They couldn't sit down, and not to say that anything's wrong with my parents,
right,
back in that day, like in their age, parents don't know what they don't know, and also they have their own traumas. Um, and not to give them excuses, but I love my parents, but I say this with radical acceptance of like, they have healed to the best of they could have healed and did the best they could,
yeah,
but it was my opportunity as an adult now with neurodivergent children to see what I could do now for
mhm,
my children, instead of just, something's wrong with them, or like they're just like they're bad, and all the things. So for me, I never believed that I had BPD. They
mm,
would throw pills at me left and right, and I would never take them. And my biggest thing was because, as an addict, because I'm also long term recovery 10, well, now 11 years, um, I made a promise that I would never take any other drug that, like, unless I knew for sure that this was going to help me, like, I could manage it. Because I knew, like, with addiction, I was just a release, like,
right,
escape. So I never took any of those pills. And then finally, I met a trauma therapist.
mm,
She we had like a 3 hour session, and she was like, "You have CPTSD." And she's like, "I
mm,
will not give you any ADHD medication or no medication." She's like, "Because you have to heal this." She goes, "Because any stimulant is going to hijack it and make you like in
mm,
those triggers, like that escape." And it's real, like,
yeah,
because a lot of those symptoms of CPTSD, which I started like trying to learn more about, it's it stays in the body, and
it
you're like,
is,
and you don't even realize, like, you, like, all of a sudden you're just like sitting there doing something and you're super focused, and then you're just zoned the heck out, and
yeah,
you're just like, what's that? And it's because internally, like, we're reliving some things, whether it triggered or not, but it's because of all that stuff, like, I couldn't heal, I couldn't process. And in addiction, unfortunately, because you said you've been in recovery too, like,
yeah,
that when we use drugs, it also deteriorates a lot of that.
mhm,
So how can I like heal and process what a lot of like I literally destroyed? So
mhm,
it was I don't like, I never wanted to be a therapist, I never wanted to be a psych or anything, but I always was fascinated by human science and communications in the mind.
mm,
So I'm finishing my degree in human science communications with a focus on uh, the more intellectual piece, the intellectual processing,
right, okay,
because personally, I already like, with my mission purpose, I help DV survivors, like children of abuse, like children who go through abuse, trafficking, all the things. And I don't know if I could handle being a therapist because there's so many other like legalities with it, and not being able to, you have to stay in your bounds with your license and everything. So that's the reason why I was like, I don't think I could ever do that, because with the work I do, I do have to sometimes like be like, hey, to a parent, like this is not okay, and
Mhm.
kind of do that. But with
Mhm.
you being a therapist, I'm curious. I have a question. Have you ever had a situation where it was like a hard point for you, where you were like, oh my, like learning, like not saying recently, but like learning, like a case where you had like, oh my gosh, like understanding that boundary of like, I can't do more than what I can do than right here in this moment. Have you
Yeah.
ever had a moment?
Oh, lots of moments. In terms of delivering therapy and being a trauma survivor, we call that countertransference,
Yeah,
right?
there we
Psychology,
go.
where but regardless of what you have, countertransference happens because we're human
Mhm.
and we all have relationship, you know, challenges and issues and things regarding our ego estates, right? In terms of our self-esteem that show up. And there's gonna be some semblance that shows up in the session, whether it's, someone that you're helping work through boundaries or a relationship thing, and it might fire up something familiar and the identification of it. Um, and so what I do is, number one, I'm still healing, and it's lifelong. And I teach
Yeah.
my clients that there is never a landing page. There's not a final landing page where I'm getting here and then I'm done and it's over,
No.
right? Like it's the evolution of your life. And I give myself that grace, knowing that I'm human, I'm still healing. I've been empowered so much up to this point, but I have a lot of reflection and self awareness when I'm working with people. I do a lot of bracketing, and if it gets to a point where I know, hey, this is bringing up some things that makes it really, really hard, and my resources are not happening, then I have that ethical duty and responsibility, right? To
Right.
refer out, or maybe I need to take some time, to make sure that I'm doing the right thing, right? Like when I'm
Yeah.
pregnant, because things still show up, and
Yeah.
it doesn't mean you can't help people, um, but yeah, it does happen. Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I've tried to like learn now is realizing there's always going to be a crisis, and there has to be a moment where like, I have to like be like, I can't do more than what I'm doing. And like, I so like pouring from an empty cup when it comes to like trafficking and DV survivors and like crisis, I feel it's really hard to say like, oh, you can't pour from an empty cup, because it's like, for me personally, because I have a lot of that lived experience,
Mhm.
that's what I'm still learning. Like, because I have put myself in situations where then, yeah, I am tapped out and burnt out afterwards. And I'm like, oh my gosh, as a spiritual being too, like
Yeah,
I go, like I do cord cutting, and I have a shaman, I do hypnosis. Like I have to do all the things too, because with CPTSD, even though I say today, like I have it in remission, when it goes back, like it's a nightmare.
yeah,
Like I literally don't want to leave the house. Like it used to be so bad to where as soon as it started getting dark, like I would have to be inside, doors locked, all windows shut. Like it's literally like a prison living with CPTSD, I feel like.
yeah.
But I want to hear your perspective, like as a psych and a mental health therapist. What could you inform anybody who's also neurodivergent and like working with that trauma, like trying to heal that trauma, but they just feel stuck? Like they just feel like they're constantly doing therapy and like it's never ending and it's not working because, for instance, like individuals with autism, like my own son, it feels like to him and to me that that's kind of what's happening. Like he's
Right.
not processing that trauma, like he's stuck in that PTSD. And I'm not sure because I'm not a therapist, but ABA therapists are like telling me like, no, ACT is working, and I'm like, I don't know.
Well, I in that case, I highly recommend um, two things. One, working with someone, say like you're in therapy and it's not working for you, with someone who's trained and credentialed in both neurodivergence and trauma. right? Because they're
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
And they can mirror each other and they have a lot of crossover or overlap, but then they have nuances and differences too,
Yeah.
right? And so how they interact with each other, it's like I can have a trauma therapist that, is not as qualified in
Mhm.
treating neurodivergence, right? And then I can have someone, who's really, really honed in the neurodivergent, right? But not the trauma, or maybe they have both, but are they qualified in recognizing how they merge together and blend,
Yeah.
how they interact because they're married, right? It's like
Mhm.
a marriage, right?
Yeah.
And that's especially in my practice, bridging how trauma and neurodivergent can be married together,
Mhm.
right? I will
Yeah.
tell you that if you have CPTSD and ADHD or autism together, no top-down approach, including ACT is acceptance and commitment therapy. DBT, even DBT, which is distress tolerance, is going it can work in the moment, but long term, you're gonna fall short. You need more bottom up approaches. And my
Yeah.
bottom up, I mean working on the body. Some of the things you're doing, you know, sounds, bathing, frequency, sensory, positive sensory stimulation, right? You have to get into bilateral stimulation, working on the nervous system, right, which
Mhm.
holds, all of these memories. And you mentioned how you have these behaviors and things you slide into. You're talking about dissociation, right? How we dissociate,
Yep.
kind of
Yep.
automatically like drown, right?
Yeah.
The pain, the emotions, the suffering.
Yeah.
But dissociation isn't bad because you got to think they're learned behaviors that um, once helped you survive
Yeah.
and cope with a threatening environment. The
Yeah.
the environment might not be threatening now, but your body doesn't know that, right?
Right.
So someone who's trained to work with the body, EMDR, brain spotting, you know, music therapy, art therapy. There's an acronym that I share, SAVERS. I don't know if you heard of SAVERS, um,
I
but
think.
like it's a mindful daily routine that if you do it every day consistently, you can really do a lot with being neurodivergent. It's get up, have some balance, affirming your within, having some visualization, right? See,
Okay.
because we see things in the world of pictures. Then you got to
Yeah.
move your body, get the
Yep.
lymph going, some stretching, mind, body, breathing like yoga, tai
Mhm.
chi, some type of slow moving, breath work, period moving or stretching. Um, let's see, SAVER is reading something, just for a couple minutes every day to stimulate the brain and the circuits,
Yep.
right? Because
Yeah.
you can settle out, right? The
Yep.
brain in terms of we have like the emotional centering and processing,
Mhm.
the central nervous system, all that, and we have the frontal lobe, executive functioning, right, critical thinking, and
Mhm.
then using your fingers and writing, coloring, drawing, journaling, but the S stands for scribing, right? Using
Yeah.
tactile sensory input goes a long
Yeah.
way. You do those 6 things every day for 3 to 5 minutes, we see tons and tons and tons of power and
Oh,
effect.
I believe it. I believe it because I follow a lot of individuals who talk about epigenetics and neuroplasticity, you name it. That's my realm right there. But one of the things that I realize that I'm actually studying right now and kind of like a hypothesis is how society today has enabled us more to not want to do all of those physical type of things because
Oh,
it's
yep.
like an illusion, right? So for instance, which as a single mother who had just gone out of jail and all things, like with my first son, today I wish I would have never ever handed him the phone, because someone who has ADHD on top of he developed PTSD in the womb because I was in jail and all the things, like I had a lot of high stress during my pregnancy. um at that time I wasn't all in depth with schooling and all this stuff now that I know all this stuff, but yeah, like giving him the phone was one of those biggest enablers to now where it is a withdrawal. Like it is a withdrawal to not be on the TV and to not be on the phone because that hyperfixation and that stimuli. So now it's like whenever he's in like the real world, it's like those impulses are coming out and those tantrum behaviors because he wants that reactive, like, or not reactive, he wants that response of attention
Mhm.
to stimulate his mind and to stimulate that dopamine, whether it be positive or negative, because he also has autism, which we didn't even find out he had autism until he was like late in his years. But with my baby, thankfully, I was able to break free of the domestic violence and do all the things. He has been in ABA since day one of me being able to break free, and he's only 3. Huge improvement.
Mm.
Like this boy, he is he is just he is fearless. He's super smart. But yes, he has those social interaction problems, also is 3, but like I see the
Right.
difference because I never gave my baby the phone.
Right.
And also like I had already studied all this stuff. I was like, nope, I'm not giving. I don't care how annoyed I am. He can go ahead and play and do something. I was like, I'm not giving him the phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's just my
Absolutely.
opinion on that. Like when you talk
Oh,
about like
no.
the
It's true. There's so much science and research, behind it. It's interesting. You said you grew up in the 90s. I remember the 90s very clearly. We had to get up and go to, right,
yep,
entertainment or media, we didn't have the luxury, right, of just waking up, and
no,
so, now it's like you have to work really hard to not be drowned, right, in everything that's happening,
yeah,
in the world, right, through the
yeah,
media and beyond. Our
yeah,
phone is right over there. It's
yeah.
very addictive. Um, it's
What
really
would you? I got a quick question. What would you say to someone who just found out that they have ADHD and
mhm,
they've been healing their trauma for quite some time,
mhm,
but they still haven't been able to find like a therapy that works, but they're considering medication?
mhm,
What would you say? Like, because you also do a psych,
mhm.
so what do you? For instance, I kind of want to know SSRIs, and I guess it's the same as antidepressants, or no? I don't know. I kind of want to know, like, would you recommend SSRIs or like an antidepressant?
Yeah, that is interesting. Okay, so SSRIs can be helpful to a point. You have to understand they're serotonin reuptake inhibitors, right?
Right.
So it works best for if your chemical imbalance is deficient in serotonin. Okay. What we know about ADHDers from the recent science is that there are a lot of hormones that are deficient in the frontal lobe that impact executive functioning, but the number one isn't serotonin. The number one is dopamine, and dopamine is different, right, than
Okay.
serotonin. And dopamine, even though it balances mood, it's like a hormone balancing mood chemical. Think of it as fuel, right, to the
Oh,
brain.
okay.
Yeah, it's like gas. So when you're low on dopamine, then your circuits, okay, in your brain can't fire up,
Mm.
which makes them underactive, which makes it hard, right? To make decisions and choices and focus and distractibility and all those things. So, all those ADHD coded things, emotional regulation.
Right.
So SSRI might not, if the ADHD symptoms, are the more dominant, the SSRI might not be effective, right, for
Mm.
you. It depends. I tell people that, let's say I have ADHD, autism, and trauma. The ADHD, even neck and neck with the autism, is going to be the most prominent.
Right. Well,
It's going to be the
and
most prominent, so I will isolate the others first. And then,
mhm.
okay, let me see what's left over. Let me see what's left over. And I say most prominent because, you know, I- autistic clients are very, um, they struggle with, like the social interactions and as you may see, like with your son, with your baby, the emotional dysregulation. But the thing with autism is they're so structured in kind of like their routine and the sameness, right? Like they're very inflexible, right, in
Yep.
that regard. But in terms of like the frontal lobe, executive functioning, that only right? When they're extremely dysregulated. With ADHD, that is their default.
Yeah.
Every single day, your baseline, right, is for executive functioning because
Right.
your that prefrontal cortex is asleep, it's underactive. So with
Yep.
ADHD most prominent, you got to take care of everything else first and then say, okay, what's left over? Um,
Yeah.
my symptoms could be from anxiety or trauma, or the autism, right? So it's that's just difficult to treat. Um,
I think
you
it's
know,
like
I don't think it's a blanket answer there, right?
no,
I
no,
don't think
it's
it's a one size fits all.
yeah.
Stimulants can be effective, or the SSRIs. When we get into the psychotropic medications, I think it's just really kind of like you try it as you go and see.
Mhm.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
right? That's what we're looking at because 100 people with the same diagnosis can present totally differently.
Yeah, and I think the reason why I asked that is because I tried to explain this to other individuals who, I work with also youth and parents and stuff, and as I personally, I never said I would be on meds. Today I am on meds because I can manage it. I just take my regular dose of Adderall, and then my son, he used to take amoxicillin, yeah, and because we tried to put him on Adderall, and that was like horrible because it was like it
Yeah.
increased the anxiety.
Mhm.
So anyways, I see a lot of the times, parents trying to just stuff all these, like, I feel like what I see is stuff all these meds to like make it better, like make it better, and as a child who also went through that of like not make it better, but I got thrown Prozac at me all the time when I was younger, and it's like take this
Yeah.
BPD med, take this mood stabilizer. Today I like to say, like, every brain is different, but know what you're putting in the brain, because if you're not doing the therapy with that and you don't have the type of environment with it, you, like, for instance, if I would, for instance, as a recovered addict 11 years now, if I would have never taken Adderall, I probably would have never got addicted to
Mhm.
meds.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I started taking Adderall to get through high school. And then I was like, oh, it made me feel normal, right? So then I tried
Mhm.
to get a script for it. Well, at the time, trying to do all this on my own, they were like, you don't have ADHD, but at the time I was still smoking weed. I was doing all the things, but I just needed to get through school. So they were like, you actually have depression. And I'm like, so today as an adult, I'm like, all of that was situational.
Mm.
Like, I really was a high functioning, but
Mhm.
since I had all the trauma and all
Yeah.
the things, like, I was escaping, so like I just am trying to learn more about the meds on top of the therapy, which I like to help parents to learn and like talk with it. I tell them one time, talk with a therapist that just doesn't want to throw meds at you, or like a
Mhm.
psych that just isn't trying to, you got to try them. Because for me, like, even what was another med that they used back in the day for kids who had ADHD? It was like
They use
not
Ritalin. They use Ritalin a lot.
Ritalin.
Huh?
Yeah, Ritalin.
In the 90s.
My
Yeah.
Yeah, so that Ritalin was like a huge one that I remember. They were like, "We will not give this to your son," but my one of my family members used to take this, and it made her a complete zombie. And I just kept thinking, like, I was a teenager at that time, and I was like, "There's no way this is okay." I was like, "She's like," and I think, like, with me today, what I like to learn about is when you explained about the SSRI and the frontal lobe, that stuff makes me know, okay, this is what I'm getting into. And I
Mm.
think those are the conversations that parents really need to have and understand, because you're right. Like, if we're just throwing all these meds in here and we don't know, like, do we have a hyperactive frontal lobe or do we have a sleepy one,
Mhm. Yeah. I'll
Yeah.
say like with ADHD, if it's ADHD, the frontal lobe is underactive. That's what causes the hyperactivity, right? Because
Mm.
the brain is trying to wake itself up because
Yeah.
circuits, okay, are like when like the gasket is on E. and you can't, and the brain is trying to wake itself up. That's why people become so fidgety, right? Or
Yeah.
can't, like, using sensory tools or rocking, right? They
Mhm.
call, like, what they call stimming.
Yep.
And it causes the body to become more impulsive. The nervous
Yeah.
system is like, uh-oh, we're trying to think and make choices and use parts, right, of that
Yeah.
frontal lobe, but the circuits don't have enough fuel. So it's really a brain, but then the body
Mhm.
to compensate,
Mhm.
right? By being active, so then you can think like, oh, I'm jumpy, right?
Yeah.
That means that my brain, right?
Yeah.
Just like
Or
regular,
like
your brain is totally asleep. Your body's trying to wake up. All
and you're
age is a sleepy brain. Yeah.
yeah, and it's a sleepy brain, but you are doing everything and
Uh-huh.
literally getting nothing
Yeah.
done.
Oh
Like
yeah.
you feel like you're getting
Yeah.
nothing done, but you're doing everything. Like it's four things are going on at the same time, and it's
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, that's
'Cause
it.
it comes with a overactive or fast firing nervous system,
Yeah.
but that's a response to the sleepy brain. That's not a symptom or origin of the condition, right?
Mm.
That's like a symptom of, like, what happened after, right?
Right, right.
So,
Wow. So
but
so when did you find out that you had ADHD?
so it's interesting, because I've studied ADHD pretty much my whole life, and I myself was not diagnosed until I was 40,
Wow.
right? I one of those children that I went through a lot of trauma, and but I thrived in school, and I was on a roll, and I just struggled. So of course, like, I came up in the '80s, and I was born in the '70s. School, primary school was late '70s, '80s, and so I was just like, oh, you're fine. There's nothing wrong with you. Like, no, um, but I remember having to, like, do a lot in terms of writing things down. I didn't know how to take notes. I would just write it all down or have to read things over and over and over. So
Yeah.
I would make the good grades, but nobody really paid attention, in terms of, like, what it took to get that. And then later on in life, I became a parent. And of course, I'm treating it in practice at this time. And my child's pediatrician was like, wait a minute, this seems to be like a neurodivergent household. And
Wow.
my middle child was working with a child psych at the time. They were like, "Yeah, you might want to get tested." And I had never considered, because I always thought it was trauma and depression and all these
Right.
other things. And here I am, I'm like, "Oh, right? So I went and got a full comprehensive psych eval. I got three of them, just to be sure. And yeah, got the diagnosis. Then I went and got a brain scan. So Dr. Daniel Amen, I don't know if you
Oh
heard.
my gosh, I love him.
Okay.
Oh no, you froze. Oh my gosh. Uh, hold on. I don't know what happened here. Oh no, it went away. Okay. It's minor technical difficulties. Let's see if we can get it back. Let's see. Ah, Okay. We will hopefully get back with Danny. There she is. Hello?
I don't know what happened.
Okay, I have no idea what happened. I was like so into that. I was like, oh my gosh, Dr. Danny Elfman, I gotta hear your brain scan story. And then all of a
Oh,
sudden it was like,
no. Yeah, I was just mentioning. Yeah. I was just mentioning that, I know Dr. Daniel Amon's work, and his team developed this vector, machine and study. I use it on myself, and I've adapted the technology in my own practice because I was doing neurofeedback to treat clients, in my own practice. But being able to see my brain, right, on that spec study and being able to see, the ADHD, because I was like, man, and when I go back and I look at my mom gave me all of these things like, oh, you were such a wonderful student, everything came. And so I was just going through my like old report cards because she kept everything. And I saw things like, struggling in reading or, you know, Danielle talks too much, right? Or if Danielle could focus, more, so I'm starting to see things, right, that was never communicated. No, it was here all along. Oh yeah, but I got diagnosed when I was 40 and my children didn't.
oh no, I'm losing you. I'm so
Uh-oh,
sorry.
can you not hear or see me now?
No, I can. I heard you when you said I got diagnosed when I was 40, but then my children, and then it cut out again. So sorry. I don't know. Do you have bars right now where you're at? Because I have full
Mm,
bars. So
yeah, I have all my bars, but you never know. I know technology can be fickle.
let me take off my
No
camera
technology.
and let me see if that helps. Okay, now go. Now talk about what happened with your children. So you got diagnosed when you're 40, and your children.
Okay, you can hear me okay now?
Yes, I can hear okay now, and I took off my camera. Just if that helps.
Okay. Um, I was just saying, that when I was 40, um, I had already been treating ADHD in practice, but I had several children. One who's on the spectrum, and then everybody else, right, had
Yeah.
ADHD. So I have 6 children, and all of them are neurodivergent, right? So, they were in treatment, and they had their own therapist, child psychologist that they were working with, and they were like, "Yeah, you might wanna yourself, get evaluated." And so
Yeah.
I did, and it came back, and then I went to do Dr. Daniel Amen spec study and got to see my brain, I saw the ADHD, on the spec study and the exam, which confirmed it. So
Wow.
that's how I got here. Yeah, so I've been neurodivergent all along, but it's interesting because I was treating it, right, long before.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That is. Oh no. Let's see. Let's take. Can you hear me? Oh my gosh, technology is not my friend right now. Hmm. Hello?
Um, I'm so sorry, Lisa. I'm not sure what's going on with you today.
Yeah, I don't know what is going on with this. I heard everything that you said until I heard everything about, you went to Dr. Daniel Amen spec and you were treating it all the whole time though, and so you were actual neurodivergent.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask a question about that. So what did
Yeah.
that feel like to be like, did that, what type of feeling did that bring to you that you were actually neurodivergent as well?
Oh, it brought clarity. It made my whole life make sense.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
Sometimes you think that things are moral failings, like, why can't I get this together? Why is this so hard? Why do I continue to throw my keys in the dumpster?
yeah,
Or um, why am I, leaving my keys in the middle of the mall or the garage, or I can't keep up with things, or it's just really, really hard to focus no matter how hard I try. Things that have occurred, major life events, and now properly seeing the full picture and then resourcing myself and then seeing the massive difference. It's very affirming and it's clarity and it's healing and empowerment of like, oh, no, you're not crazy. Oh, you were not a failure, right? You're neurodivergent and you just needed resources.
yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Wow. That's that's amazing. I hope so many
Mm.
people can tune in and also like what listen to your story and really understand that it doesn't matter of the diagnosis, that if you have the will and you want, to give back and just make a difference, it's definitely possible because like you said, you have your own practice now where
Yeah.
you have that lived experience and you can relate, and not only a nonprofit but also a business,
Hmm.
and being a mother of 6 kids. That you got your hands full. Like it's a huge inspiration to me over here. um
Yeah.
what would be something that you would want to say to your younger self before you were here today, before you had the business of the nonprofit? What would you say to your younger self, when you're going through your all the stuff you went through, the trauma and everything?
Hmm. Oh goodness, so many things come up. As I have been working avidly on all of my inner children, you know, uh,
Yeah.
my younger self, I would tell her that, you know, even though they don't see you and can't see you, right, that, you know, want you to prioritize the visibility for yourself and to never give up and to keep going, to do the thing, right?
Yeah.
You know, um,
Yeah.
and just keep affirming her, in that way because I think that was one of the biggest things that impacted me early on. Is the invisibility, the dismissal, the lack of people being able to see me in my nature, and how
Right.
impact.
Yeah. Wow, that was
Yeah,
beautiful. Well, thank you so
yeah.
much for sharing that. I so where can people go? Are you national too? So if someone's not living in Virginia, can they still utilize your services?
It depends on the state. And at some point that will be. I'm not sure if you've heard of the Compact. But it's recent legislative policy that is becoming federal to where any licensed provider uh, will be able to see, they'll have like the reciprocity to see anyone
Wow.
nationwide. But right now, I think we're up to like about 32 states. I am licensed in 8 states, but there are on my website. You can find me online through all social platforms under Dr. Danny 757. 757 is the area code of Virginia where I live. Also, my website is dannymurphy.com, and also the two nonprofits. So my private practice is Refuel Life Trauma Center.
Yeah.
Uh, that website is traumacenterva.com, and Refuel Life Inc. Inc.org. Again, that's Refuel Life Inc. Inc.org, and all the socials match that too. Refuel Life Inc. Youth Life Trauma Center, and Dr. Danny
I love
across
that.
all
Yes.
Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, and Instagram.
Yes, I will tag that all and also um like once I get the episode up so that way I can backlink and shoot, like Gary even said to the last person I spoke to in South Carolina, if I could ever get out there, I would love to meet you in person and for us to have a session in person and to just like show
Oh,
what you do
yes,
because
absolutely.
I'm real big right now about moving outside of where I've been in Colorado as a native and really just exploring more and traveling and understanding like this
Hmm.
mission purpose, this walk, and we're not alone and we really need to connect, whether it be a state away or a whole nation away. But
Yeah,
we all have a mission purpose, and I think turning our pain and our lived experience into that to make a ripple in this world is who my people are and where I want to be around.
yes, I love it. Thank you
Yeah.
for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And thank you so much for your time. I can't wait to speak further and just keep in touch. And then I'll also throw you guys on my nonprofit site as well, where we bridge the gap between abuse, addiction, and systems.
Yes, yes.
Yes. So thank you so much, Danny, for your time and such an inspiration. Seriously. And just one day at a time. And I'll hope to talk with you soon.
Okay, talk to you soon. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.